Welcome, dear friends. Blessed Advent to you. In today's meditation, we reflect on the universal call to sanctity and the transforming power of God's grace in our lives. This episode is the first episode of a two-part series exploring the themes of this beautiful meditation. For more Carmelite resources, visit the General Curia of the Teresian Carmel at discalcedcarmelite.com. Now let us begin our journey into Father Gabriel's profound spiritual insights.
All right, we're diving into divine intimacy today, and I got to admit, the title of this meditation, Sanctity and the Plenitude of Grace, I kind of thought, okay, this is going to be really deep. But Father Gabriel, he just has a way of making even like the complex spiritual stuff feel accessible.
I totally agree. That's one of the things that makes his writing work for people who have been, on the spiritual path for a while, and also people who are just starting to explore their faith more deeply.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get too far, let's set the scene for anyone who maybe isn't familiar with this book. So we're looking at divine intimacy, meditations on the interior life for every day of the liturgical year, and it's written by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene, who's a Carmelite priest. And this meditation, it focuses on sanctity and grace, which, they sound a little bit intimidating, but I promise you, Father Gabriel really makes it relevant for, everyday life.
Yeah, he really does. And right from the start, he kind of tackles this question that I think a lot of us have wondered about. If we're all called to be saints, what does that even mean? It can't just be about, the super holy people we see in stained glass windows, right?
Exactly. He's kind of turning that whole idea of sanctity upside down.
Yeah.
It's not about, crazy miracles or those mystical experiences. It's about something, I think, deeper than that and maybe even more, attainable than we might think at first.
Yeah, totally. He says that sanctity is basically the perfection of the Christian life, which, that sounds kind of, overwhelming when you first hear it. But then he unpacks it more and explains that it's about that supernatural life we get through grace and how it grows and blossoms. I love that image he uses, a seed in baptism. It's just like a seed. Our spiritual life needs to be nurtured and taken care of to grow.
I see why they call this divine intimacy, huh? It really is about growing that relationship with God. But I have to admit, I still struggle with this idea of perfection. It feels like a super high bar to reach.
I think what's helpful to keep in mind is that Father Gabriel's coming from a Carmelite spirituality perspective, and the Carmelites really emphasize how powerful God's grace is. And when we say perfection in this context, it's not about being completely flawless and never making mistakes. It's more about always trying to get closer to God and allowing his grace to shape us into the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So it's more about the journey and how we're transformed by grace than just the destination. And speaking of grace, Father Gabriel makes it really clear that we can't earn sanctity. It's a pure gift from God because of what Jesus did for us. And it's not just like a one-time thing at baptism, right?
Definitely not. He's really emphatic that grace is an ongoing, it's dynamic, it's a gift that keeps on giving. He quotes John 1:14-16, where it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace." It's we're constantly being showered with this incredible gift.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about using it all up. It's an abundant, overflowing source of divine life. But, and I think there's a but, coming here, it's not like we just sit back and let grace do its thing. We have to do something, right?
You're picking up on something really important. Father Gabriel doesn't let us completely off the hook. He says that even though grace is freely given, it also needs our cooperation. We have to be active participants in our own becoming holy. So it's not just waiting around for something to happen, it's responding to God's invitation to grow in holiness.
So it's like God is reaching out to us, offering this amazing gift, but it's up to us to reach out and grab it.
Exactly. And this is fascinating. Father Gabriel suggests that we can actually block God's work in us. Well, he doesn't use the word block, but he talks about how being lukewarm and our love for God and laziness can hinder grace. Think about that. We can actually get in the way of the very thing that's supposed to be changing us for the better.
Whoa, that's kind of a scary thought. We're thinking of grace as this gentle rain helping our souls grow, but then we realize we can put up an umbrella and block it out. But what does that even look like in real life? How do we even know if we're working with grace or getting in its way?
That's the big question, and that's where things get really interesting. Father Gabriel challenges us to really look at our hearts, at the choices we're making, and ask, are these choices bringing me closer to God or pulling me further away? It's realizing that our actions have consequences, not just for us, but for our relationship with God.
So, we have to be paying attention to how the Holy Spirit's nudging us, be careful about the choices we make, and be honest about whether we're letting grace really work in our lives.
Absolutely. It's not always easy, that's for sure. Father Gabriel would probably say that real growth often means doing things that push us outside our comfort zones and help us to become more than we are right now.
And it's not just a one-time thing either. This whole journey of working with grace, it's like a lifelong thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why he's so clear about the difference between the what he calls the great saints, whose lives are marked by, those extraordinary events, and what he calls the hidden saints. These are the people who are living out their faith in like the ordinary, everyday stuff of life.
That image of the hidden saints, it really speaks to me. It's like a reminder that being holy isn't just for a select few. It's something we can live out no matter what our circumstances are.
Exactly. And I think that's where we see grace really working. It's not about being in the spotlight or doing huge showy things. It's about letting God's love shine through us in those regular everyday moments.
So it's less about what we do and more about who we're becoming, about letting that seed of grace from baptism grow into like the fullness of who God made us to be, right?
You got it. And that's what makes this meditation so powerful for all of us. It's not about comparing ourselves to some perfect ideal. It's about embracing our own unique journey, trusting that God's grace is enough to guide us and transform us along the way.
That is a relief to hear. So we've talked about how everyone's called to be holy, that grace is this abundant gift, and working with grace is key. But it's still a little bit, I don't know, abstract. Can we ground this a little bit? How does this all actually play out in our everyday lives?
That's a great question, and one that I think Father Gabriel would want us to really grapple with. It's not enough to just know about these ideas in our heads. It's about letting them change our hearts and how we actually live.
So instead of getting lost in theological jargon, we need to bring it down to earth. Like, how does this call to holiness, this working with grace, show up in how we interact with people, in our relationships, at work, in the real world?
And I think that's where we'll uncover how deep and beautiful what Father Gabriel's trying to say really is.
It sounds like we have a lot more to unpack here. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's just take a second to let all of this sink in.
Yeah, let pause and let these first insights kind of resonate for a bit. Think about what it means for you to be called to holiness, to work with grace, and to let God's love transform your life.
We're going to delve into all of this more in just a minute, but for now, just sit with these questions, and we'll be right back after a quick break.
Thank you for spending this time with us today, reflecting on the wisdom of the Carmelite saints. I hope these words have inspired and uplifted you. Until next time, may God bless us and keep us close to his heart. Take care and see you soon.